New place, September 24th, 2025. Oh yeah, there's some up there too. So I'm happy. Sometimes I just phase out somewhat listening to the news to see if there's new news instead of repeated news on CBC, but or the other channel 99. Is it 99.1? I'm not sure. And but I'm happy with how it turned out because it's a new layout of the limited furniture to try to make it more efficient in this bachelor's unit, and it's also required, right? For example, to lower the noise on the neighbor downstairs, but also for me not to trip because I've tripped a lot with the lifting tiles that were improperly done. That accumulates bugs that I'm trying to get rid of also. And so I'm going to have to use a lot of vinegar many times in this vacuum many times, not just on top, but in the cracks and underneath. But I'm happy with the way it's turning out because it's more comfortable to walk on and it doesn't lift the tiles as much. But it was a required expense because of the landlord hiring incompetent people on purpose. And who could actually rehire that person, as the next one, if the person fails in all the other places they keep traveling to fail. You might say, hey, Martin, does that sound like you? No, because I document my work really well, and I also challenge people to discuss my work, and I don't refuse debate or the freedom of speech. So, for example, the landlord said, "Oh yeah, I just found out also that you got kicked out of your last place." Yeah, well, you just said this in front of two other tenants to turn them against me when I try to do the work that you are too incompetent and uncaring to do. And I wouldn't even be charged for it. And it intimidates him, right? So what he does is lateral violence, and then it doesn't take long before my posters to describe doesn't even have my name. I didn't even sign them. I just paid to have the library print the definition of lateral violence, and both upstairs and downstairs disappear fairly quick. I didn't see them torn up in my mailbox, but somebody took them down. If I had signed them, they would have put in my mailbox because they would have known more for sure it was me. And so that's a form of lateral violence, like getting rid of a poster to describe what lateral violence is. And it's also something that Indigenous communities and non-Indigenous communities always have to keep in mind, especially if they put up posters for Every Child Matters, because children pick up this role modeling from the adults all the time, that I see all the time, including from certified teachers, by the way, or people that are hired as educators and whatever their nepotism got them into as roles in education, and nepotism or the fear of white people, let's say, coming in from far away, wanting to devote their lives to the community, and they fear that too much that they think to actually heal is to refuse a helper, and that's not healing at all. So I would say that to Columbus Charities, to refuse a helper here is, it is something wrong with you. It seems I need to pray for you and I'm not religious. So what I was going to say, because the phone rang before I was going to do this, but what I was going to say is going to be in a different vlog. I don't want it to be in today's vlog. Well, actually it could. So this is a new place to document the expenses of me making this a more pleasant and comfortable and safer place for myself and other tenants because of the poorly done new tiles that I helped to bring from 2 floors down, because they were all put in the basement instead of some on the main floor and some on the second floor, where there is some storage for it. So it wasn't very bright that the person worked really hard and they think they're a great worker but not a good thinker to bring them all downstairs in this unlocked kind of storage locker downstairs. It's the kind of thing that if you bring it up, they attack you instead of saying, hey, that's not a bad idea. Could you actually help bring it there? But now they are paying some Filipinos to do more of the work that they try to put more quality in. I've seen places that were finished after mine, and yes, those Filipinos, at least some of them, if it was Filipinos that were actually doing the floors, they know how to make the floors. So, but I've seen people would have lived in apartments a long time and their floors are awesome. and it's the same tiles. And of course they know they should have removed the linoleum underneath. But it was a quick fix to try to get one more unit ready with my help. But when the abuse got too bad, they lost my help of my own unit for free. My help for free to get my unit that it hadn't been used for so many months, this unit. It was just used as another storage place for all the messiness of the guy's tools. And yet they would hire this person back because it's not about human rights for Columbus Charities or the landlord. And tenants here, I tell you, they don't act the same as the seniors I interact with at the senior center. So there's a difference in measurable civility and social skills between. So again, I'm hanging out with seniors in another building because this building is the kind that, you know, emerges from landlords like that, and then eventually from you know, tenants attracting similar tenants, right? Because, you know, there are kind of family members and things that start showing up really quick on the lists that are waiting, you know. So yeah, and this is non-indigenous nepotism I'm talking about, and it's because it's some of the more toxic, but that don't give trouble to the landlord, right? So what I want to say is I'm hearing the ostrich farm. Oh, thanks for waiting 6.5 minutes for the topic. And the ostrich farm are just really proud that they just said a prayer and then it came, and thank God. And what they don't get in their cognitive dissonance, and is an example of how believing in 3 different kinds of worldviews at the same time makes you very much less sentient and sapient than other species on this planet, is they don't realize that the protests they're doing are because our species hasn't advanced enough in the scientific paradigms. That's why we need this. That's why we needed protests if it was the right thing to do. I don't have all the facts, you know, because I'm not aware of all the science. And if I was, I would make decisions based on science. But the fact that things like religions and the Kaching monetary paradigms, which is magical, have become the dominant worldview types of worldviews in all cultures of the world, pretty much. I would say 99.999, unless there's an aboriginal one that lives in the woods or on an island, and they'll keep shooting arrows at anybody that comes close. I'm not saying they've advanced the scientific paradigms very far, and I'm not saying they don't have a supernatural paradigm, but they probably wouldn't have a magical paradigm in the sense of believing in the concept of ownership or pieces of paper or plastic that gives you control over other people, right? And people really allow themselves to be victims of this kind of control. So again, don't associate prayers, people, to follow the science in some of the statements of your protests, because what you're doing is you're picking and choosing different fictional realities that are dominant for you to make arguments with, or to believe in, or to kind of, you know, set your core beliefs to resonate with, when it's simpler to just stick to reality when it comes to things that you have passion about, right? And stick to the scientific paradigms. So please know that for me, you know, let's say I was there, and let's say I had more information and I wanted to go protest, and you know, I'd be sure the RCMP treat everybody well, and we treat the RCMP well as one of the skill sets I'd have as a protester. I would also be against other protesters who kind of mix up this mumbo jumbo in their poor little cognitive dissonant infected heads about these different worldviews that can't coexist in a sane person at the same time, but who sadly are the 99.999% of people primates that I interact with and that I also share DNA with. It's very, very sad for me.